What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? Welcome back. I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. We're going to do a quick recap of this past weekend's UFC. It was the Sean Strickland versus Jack Hermansson card. It was a little bit of a losing event for us. We did end up in the red, but luckily it was less than one unit. I think it was like 0.7 units, so not too bad. We've had a handful of losing events lately, but luckily all the losing events have been pretty small, and the winning events have been quite a bit bigger. So we're still sitting in a pretty good spot. I think we're sitting at about 40 units overall that we're up since we started tracking on October 9th, 2021. So still looking pretty good. We're going to start at the top of the card. I'm just going to talk about each fight a little bit, and then we'll end the video by kind of going through the bets that we had and talking a little bit about those. And then I am still doing the research for this next weekend's card, Izzy versus Whitaker 2. I'm about halfway done with the tape study for that. I do already have some bets up for that one, so if you're interested in seeing what I've got, go ahead and check out betmma.tips/erikblock. That's ERIKBLOCK. But I will likely be adding to that as I continue to do tape study. All right, so jumping right in at the top of the card, Jack Hermansson versus Sean Strickland. That fight went pretty much how we thought it would. I think I called for Strickland to get a finish in like the fourth or fifth round, but yeah, it went to decision. It wasn't terribly surprising either. Fight played out entirely on the feet. Hermansson wasn't. I don't think Hermansson got him down at all, did he? I always have such a hard time remembering the details, but yeah, I'm pretty sure Hermansson wasn't able to get him down at all. It all played out on the feet. Strickland was the better boxer, busier, more accurate. Pretty much called that to a T. That's pretty much how we saw that one going. Strickland, what do you say about Strickland? He's got that persona where he's like crazy and talks about how he wants to kill someone in the ring, but then his style couldn't be more the opposite of that. Like the persona that he puts across, he seems like the kind of guy who would not have, a really careful, measured minute winning style, but that's what he is. He's the ultimate minute winner, really, is what he is. He's got a smart game plan. He sticks to it. He plays conservatively. Yeah, and he kind of, he called himself out for that too. He said, I got to quit fighting like that. I got to, come out here with a little more hunger and try to finish people. But, yeah, the guy's climbing the ladder. And, I mean, he's, we could see Strickland ending up with a title shot before long here. And I don't hate it, I mean, I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know how he's going to do as he continues to fight his way up the ladder. I don't see him beating the very best fighters in the division, but I don't hate the idea of him getting a shot at it. So we'll see what happens. Next up was our co-main event, Nick Maximov versus Punahele Soriano. I missed portions of this fight, but from what I saw, Maximov looked pretty good. I mean, I saw a lot of people saying it was not an impressive performance, and I guess I'll have to go back and rewatch it and see what that was all about. The parts I saw, it looked pretty impressive to me. I missed most of the first round, and then I caught part of the second round and the third round, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, I mean, we pretty much knew what the dynamic was here. Either Soriano was going to be able to catch Maximov late, or there was a good chance that Soriano was going to kind of fade down the stretch and Maximov would take over with his wrestling, and the latter is what ended up playing out there. But that's a nice win for Nick Maximov. He obviously doesn't have a super well-rounded skill set at this point, but he's only like 23, 24 years old. Being a Diaz Army guy, he you can expect that jiu-jitsu might always be kind of where he butters his bread, but the Diaz brothers I feel like they used their jiu-jitsu early on in their careers, and then eventually they kind of forewent the jiu-jitsu altogether just for those high volume kind of pitter-patter boxing style. Not to say that that's necessarily where Maximov is going to go, but it makes sense to assume that his boxing is going to improve as he continues to train. And yeah, it's nice to see. It's not that often we see somebody only like 23 years old come in with a pretty decent game that's able to work at this level. It's nice to see that. I mean, Soriano's not top of the heap, but he's a tough guy with well-rounded skills, and Maximov was able to handle him even at this age and at his level of experience. So that's cool to see. I'm excited to see what they do with Maximov next. And Soriano too. I mean, I like Puna. He's fun to watch. He's got a well-rounded game. He's got a lot of power. So yeah, I'll be excited to see what happens with both those guys. Next up, Carlston Harris versus Shavkat Rachmaninov. I did favor Rachmaninov to win there, but I think I said I I think I said on the Best Bets show last week on DFS by the Numbers, I said that Rachmanov, that the number was probably a little off on him and there was maybe some hype tax. Well, that didn't appear to be the case with the way the fight played out. I thought there was a good chance that this fight would play out a lot more closely than people were imagining, but that did not really end up being the case. It looks like Shavkat probably is as special as people were making him out to be, so it'll definitely be interesting to see what they do with him next. I mean, he's a huge guy for the division. Seems to be super well-rounded. I mean, he's got great striking. He's got great grappling. I mean, coming out with that crazy, that crazy spinning wheel kick and landing that on Harris and then finishing on the ground, yeah, it'll be cool. But I still think Carlston Harris is a fun prospect too. I don't think it's not like this is the end of the road for him or anything. He lost to the guy who's pretty much the biggest up-and-comer in the division, so... But yeah, both good fighters. I like these guys. It'll definitely be interesting to see what we do with Rachmanov next. There's people already talking about Rachmanov and Hamzat coming up at some point. I mean, that's a fight. You figure they got to do it eventually, right? Those are kind of the two most talked about guys in welterweight right now. Next up, we've got Brendan Allen versus Sam Alvey. I don't even know what to say. You could probably tell from my pre-fight breakdowns that I don't think much of Sam Alvey. And I don't mean that personally. Obviously, Sam's great. Who doesn't love smiling Sam Alvey, But he's now winless in 8 fights, his last 8 fights in the UFC. I mean, I haven't seen if they've cut him yet or not, but I mean, they've got to. I don't see how they can keep him around at this point. But we've been saying that for several fights already, and they still kept him around, so who knows. But yeah, leading up to this fight, my breakdown was, you still hear people say that and all it takes is one for Alvey. He's got that power, and all he's got to do is land on you. He keeps that left hand cocked back, and I just don't buy that narrative anymore. I don't, We saw in the first round, it's not like Sam Alvey is completely shot. I mean, he looked pretty good in that first round. He won the first round. He was landing shots. Actually, going into round 2, I was kind of thinking, shit, Sam Alvey might win this fight, I mean, if he could have kept building momentum from how round 1 looked and then building that into round 2. Didn't play out that way, obviously. Brendan Allen was able to land on him. And then, he jumped on his back and got a rear naked choke without the hooks in, if I remember correctly. It was almost like a bulldog choke looking thing. I'm trying to remember exactly, but I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments if I don't have that exactly right. But yeah, and this fight was up at 205. Brendan Allen obviously will be dropping back down to 185. He doesn't really belong at 205. But yeah, and then Sam Alvey said in an interview, he said, he knows he's disappointed in the run that he's on, obviously. He said he's not done fighting. He probably won't be in the UFC anymore. He said he wants to take some time off and improve some things, but that he, he doesn't intend to be done fighting. But how old? Let me look him up. How old is Sam Alvey? I mean, he's obviously getting up there a little bit, but I don't know how old he actually is. Let me see. Oh, he's 35. Oh, see, I thought Sam Alvey was more like 38, 39, pushing 40. He's only 35. I should say only. I mean, not that that's a spring chicken, but, up at 205. I guess he's been fighting at 85 again now more so, but, 35. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, with the way he's been looking, it's not like he's going to have some big career resurgence, but, could he take some time off and go into another organization and still have some fights? Yeah, and he probably will, I mean, what's Sam Alvey going to do? He's the kind of guy who I can't see him just deciding he wants to walk away. The guy likes to fight, So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him next. Go try to win $1 million in the PFL or something. I don't know that I like his chances to make that happen, but something to do, huh? All right, next up we had, what was the next fight? Oh, Brian Battle and Treyshawn Gore. I like Brian Battle. I guess I like Treyshawn Gore too. Even after this fight, obviously I'm going to have to rewatch, but I said before this fight that I didn't feel like I had much of a read on Treyshawn Gore. I sort of still feel like I don't. He's obviously powerful. He's obviously athletic. He's got some skills, but he just doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't jump off the page, I guess, in as far as the kind of performances that he tends to put on. Whereas Brian Battle is a guy that stands out to me. I really like the performances Brian Battle puts on. He seems well-rounded. I like that he's got that kicking game. I like his swag. I think I said this pre-fight too. There's just something about the way Brian Battle carries himself and the way he performs in the octagon that I really like. I don't know how to put my finger on it exactly, but But yeah, this fight went pretty much how I expected it to, I guess. Like I was leaning for Brian Bell either to win by decision or to win by a late finish, and he did win a decision here. I believe it was a decision, right? Yep. All right, next fight. Giuliani Rosa versus Steven Peterson. If you bet Peterson here, I just want to say, nice work. That was a good bet. I mean, Rosa was like minus 440 or something. Peterson was, I don't know, what was he, plus 300 thereabouts or something like that. I don't know. But with how closely this fight played out, that Peterson was a good bet. That if this fight happened again, I didn't make that bet, but if this fight happened again, I would make that bet with how closely it played out. I did actually put Rosa in a parlay. I had 3 square parlays that I put together for this event, and all 3 of them hit, and it's a good thing because I lost literally all of my other bets, all of my straight bets, all my props. We'll take a look at that at the end of the video here, but my parlays were the only thing that saved me. And if you look at my numbers, if you look on betmma.tips, it breaks down how your bets have done by props, parlays, and straight bets. And parlays are where I do my best work by far. Oh, and one thing I want to say about that, a lot of people, a lot of really, like sharp cappers kind of think that playing square parlays is just it's just sort of like a square thing to do. It's just kind of like not a sharp thing to do or whatever. And I mean, I don't know, the way I see it, if you're making money, you're making money. If you're putting your parlays together and they're working, then they're working. But one thing I want to say about that is I didn't just throw all of the big favorites into parlays here. I made 3 square parlays, and they all hit. And the reason they all hit is because I stayed away from the right favorites. I didn't put Dennis Bondar in any of them because I was not sold on Dennis Bondar. That fight didn't play out the way that I thought it would. We'll get to that. But, if I had to pick, I would have still favored Dennis Bondar to win. But I thought the fight was a lot closer than the odds looked. I didn't like the idea of putting minus 300 or whatever it was, Bondar into parlays, so I didn't. And if I had, some of my parlays would have lost. So just pointing that out, it's not like I'm just randomly taking favorites and parlaying them together. I'm choosing the favorites that I think are going to win and that I think have numbers that have potentially some value on them. But anyway, going back to Rosa and Peterson, fight of the year candidate. I mean, both guys just brought it and put it down. They were both bleeding everywhere. Both just, no concern for defense really, just slugging away. It was a really fun fight, and good for Steven Peterson for putting on. I mean, it sucks that he missed weight, but good for him for putting on that kind of performance. Because going into this, I really thought Rosa was gonna absolutely. I don't want to say absolutely dominate, but I think Rosa is the much better fighter. Peterson managed to win round 2 and managed to look pretty good in the other rounds. But he's one of those guys who he's just tough. And he's not going anywhere. And if you can't take him out, he's going to be right there in your face until the last minute. So very fun fight. Good work to both of those guys. I think they say, I don't know, that you're not eligible for the fight night bonuses if you miss weight, I think, but I'm hoping they still will do those, locker room bonuses or whatever if you miss weight, because that was just a great performance. Very gutsy from both guys. I hope they both make some money there. So next fight was Miles Johns and John Castaneda. I stayed away from that one from a betting perspective because I just thought it was one of those fights that it's just going to play out pretty closely. I didn't feel comfortable picking a side there. I did think it was kind of a dog or pass kind of thing. I passed. If I was going to bet it, I would have bet Castaneda, and then I would have won because Castaneda did win. But, yeah, I definitely was leaning Johns to win here after watching the tape. I thought Johns was just the much harder hitter for one thing. I mean, Johns, but that, some of that, the fact that he is such a hard hitter kind of played to his detriment here in some ways, I think, because he sort of burned himself out a little bit and was sort of, he throws those kind of punches where he can almost like trip himself. He throws so hard. It's almost like, like when a Muay Thai fighter throws the leg kick and rather than like pulling it back like you'd see a karate fighter do, they, spin all the way around and use that momentum. It's almost like Miles Johns, the way he throws punches, it's almost like he's got to spin all the way around because of the momentum he's creating. But yeah, nice performance from John Castaneda there. Again, that was one of those fights where it's, if I'm being quite honest, it all kind of blended together for me, and I can't remember the details very well, but Castaneda found an arm triangle choke in round 3 and was able to get the finish there. I think, is he the first person to submit Miles Johns? I can't remember for sure, but anyway. Next up, we had Hakeem Dawadu versus Mike Trisano. I did put Dawadu in a parlay. Let me talk about kind of the number one thing that I feel like I learned from this event betting-wise, because that's really why I like to do these recap videos, is it gets me to kind of talk through these things to share with you guys, but also just kind of for myself to like, I like to sit down and look at the results and figure out how I can improve, because I'm still pretty new to this, taking MMA betting seriously. I've been betting MMA for probably 15 years here and there or whatever, but as far as really breaking it down and taking it seriously, that's something that I'm new to, so I've got a lot to learn, and I'm trying to learn every single event. And part of what I learned from this event is I have a tendency to not want to make a bet unless it's got a plus sign in front of it. That's why I'm always parlaying together the favorites, and I'm always straight betting underdogs. Like I never want, when I look at a bet and I'm like, my possible return on this, like I don't like the idea of like, I'm going to lay 2.5 units and win like 1 unit or something. I just don't like those plays. And I've realized that I need to stop thinking that way. Like if I look at a line that's like minus 200 or worse, I automatically shy away from playing it except in a parlay. I'm like, I'm not going to play that straight. But I need to change my thinking on that and realize that if the value's there, the value's there, one instance where I did do that was Tyler Santos versus Joanne Wood. I put 7 units on Tyler Santos at minus 280, which was a huge number, and I normally wouldn't do that, but I was so confident in her winning. That was the first time that I'd watched tape on a fight, and I was like, I literally cannot envision a way that Joanne Wood can win this fight, and I literally thought there was value still in minus 280, and she ended up at like minus 400 by the time it closed, so I was glad I made that bet. But since then, I haven't really thought that way. So the reason I brought that up here is because Dawadu versus Trisano. If you go to betmma.tips and look at my bets, I have the little write-ups that I do. If you look at my write-up for this fight, I said that I really couldn't see a way that Dawadu was going to lose. After watching the tape, my read on this matchup was Dawadu is the better striker, the busier striker, the harder striker, mixes up his strikes better. Basically I was like, this fight's going to play out on the feet, and I think Dawadu is going to win it pretty clearly. I did see some people on Trisano because they felt like it was a fight that was going to play out pretty closely and could have gone to split decision, that kind of thing. I felt pretty confident in Dawadu here, and he closed him on minus 170. And the way the fight played out, and after watching the tape, I was lining Dawadu like in the range of like minus 230 to minus 250. And I would say the way the fight played out, he looked closer to that, So there was value on that minus 170. And I thought there was, but I was just like, I'm not going to bet minus 170 straight. So that's really my big takeaway here is to stop doing that and to stop thinking that I need to parlay those kind of numbers to get a plus sign in front of it. And it was actually a couple guys I was talking to on Twitter that kind of helped me to talk through some of this. It was Block Bets and James from Lucrative MMA. I ended up having a discussion with them on Twitter about, they're like, there's no number that is inherently unplayable. If somebody's minus 1,000 and you think there's value there, what's wrong with... Well, one thing that Block Bet said was, he's like, think about it this way. If you're playing the stock market and you get an 8% return in a year, that's considered good. If you make a bet and you think there's value there and you're only making 8% return on that bet, then that's a good bet. And, I never thought of it that way. I'm always like, if I'm putting a unit out there and I win, I want to be getting more than a unit back, but I need to quit thinking that way. Gotta, and I mean, I understand the whole, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I do fully get that, but I don't think of it that way in terms of like each individual bet. I don't think that like, hey, if there's value, if I'm putting down a unit and getting back, 0.2 units, if the value is there, go for it. Anyway, I don't have much else to say about that fight as far as a breakdown. Dawadu looked great. He won a pretty comfortable 30-27. That's about all I got to say about that one. Next up, we had, I scrolled right past it, Marc-Andre Barriault versus Chidi Njokuani. This was a fight where I felt like I had a pretty strong read, and Chidi Njokuani ended up throwing my read right out of the octagon in a matter of 16 seconds. So so I initially had bet, I think I put 1.5 units on Barrio at minus 130. Because my read on this was, I mean, we've seen Chidi get held up against the fence a lot. We've seen Chidi get taken down and held on his back. And Barrio is a pretty consistent and measured pressure fighter. He likes to hold people against the cage and that kind of thing. So I was like, this is a tailor-made spot for Barrio to do what he does best against somebody who accepts those positions. I'm not convinced that it necessarily wouldn't have played out that way if Chidi didn't spark him out of there in 16 seconds. So yeah, we didn't really get to see. And then the day of, this is kind of dumb, but the morning of the event, because I initially bet Barrio at minus 130, and then he was at even money. He was at plus 100, I think, that morning. So I started thinking, like, well, if I thought there was value at minus 130, is it smart for me to put down a little more on him at plus 100? And I was watching some TV show, and this song came on that was like, Chidi Bang Bang, Chidi Bang. And I was like, because, that's Chidi and Joaquin's nickname, Bang Bang, Chidi Bang Bang. And I was like, okay, well, that's got to be a sign. I don't really believe in that kind of stuff. It was just supposed to be funny more than anything. But I was like, that's got to be a sign that I am not supposed to put more money down on Marc-Andre Barrio. But I ended up doing it. So, yeah, altogether I ended up putting 2.5 units down on him, which obviously those got flushed down the drain pretty quickly. Oh, and then I also ended up putting a little bit. I put 0.2 units on Barrio to finish in round 3 because Chidi has been finished. I don't remember the exact numbers, but Chidi has been finished in 6 of his 7 losses, I think. And I liked the idea of Barrio just kind of putting on pressure and wearing him down and potentially finding a finish late in the fight. Clearly, that did not happen. But good for Chidi and Joaquin, man. The guy's been around for a long time. He's fought in a lot of the big organizations. Finally makes his UFC debut, and couldn't be a much better debut for him. So good for Chidi. That was cool to see. Next up, we've got Alexis Davis versus Julia Stoliarenko. I did have Davis in a parlay, I believe, with Dawadu. So that parlay won. That was cool to see. But, really the main takeaway from this fight is Julia Stoliarenko. She's kind of one of the most trash-talked fighters by cappers. People call her Stolia Stinko and stuff because yeah, her UFC performances prior to this one were pretty poor. She just didn't really look like she could get any kind of game going. And to some degree she did here, I mean, in the second, she just about got the armbar numerous times, which is kind of, that's where she butters her bread. She's the dollar store Ronda Rousey. If you count her, she has several fights on her Tapology that say something like special rules or whatever. I don't know if those were grappling matches or what, but if you count those, I think she has 9 finishes by armbar, and I think 7 of them in actual MMA matches. So pretty good against lower level competition, but still. But yeah, she nearly got the armbar a few times, and then she won the striking exchanges in round 2. I mean, she was hurting Davis. She won round 2. So yeah, Davis ends up winning the decision here, but it was definitely 29-28. Stoliarenko definitely won one of the rounds. Also, Stoliarenko looked to be in really good shape here. That was something I noticed right away when she came out. She looked a little more cut up and a little more bricked up. I don't know if she's working with a new strength and conditioning coach or something, but yeah, that was my main takeaway here, was that Julia Stoliarenko might not be as bad as people think she is, and she looks like she's taking her training pretty seriously, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with her next. Alexis Davis is, I think, 37 years old, still a solid fighter, obviously put on a solid performance here, but probably getting into the twilight of her career here. Next up, we've got Jailton Almeida versus Danilo Marquez. I put half a unit on Danilo Marquez at plus 325 because I thought that line was ridiculous. My read on this fight was, yes, Jailton Almeida is younger and stronger and more athletic, but other than that, they have a somewhat similar skill set. So putting Marquez at plus 325, which is what I'm look at my Z's mug here. It must have been around 22-23%. I was like, come on, he's higher than that. But Almeida came out here and covered his price and then some. He was minus 400 or whatever he was. He looked minus 400 or better. So yeah, that guy is a problem. Pretty much a perfect performance from him here. He was all over Marquez. Marquez never had a chance. So, if you're a guy at 205 who has that kind of athleticism and that kind of grappling, that can take you pretty far, I think. So it'll be cool to see what happens with Jailton Almeida from here. Next fight, we had Philip Rowe versus Jason Witt. I did have a bet here on Witt. What did I get him at? Plus 110, I think. I'll pull that up at the end here and we'll take a look. But I did have a bet on Witt. And after round 1, I was feeling pretty good about that bet cashing. I was like, oh, I also bet the over 1.5. And we came about 15 seconds away from that over 1.5 hitting. But, yeah, Jason Witt's chin is even worse than I thought it was. I did take that into account when making that bet. But, yeah, after Jason Witt won, looked good with his wrestling, was able to control Rowe in round 1, and then Rowe comes out and catches him and finishes him pretty quickly in the second round there. And we came 15 seconds away from hitting the over 1.5. But, yeah, I lost both of my bets on that one. And then the first fight of the night, already talked about it a little bit, was Dennis Bondar versus Malcolm Gordon. Bondar was a big favorite there. Gordon came out and did his thing. Kind of a freak injury. It was like the old, back in the Pride days when Mark Coleman took down Shogun, wasn't it? Yeah, Mark Coleman took down Shogun. Shogun posted that arm. You're never supposed to do that. When you get thrown or in the middle of a takedown, don't post that arm out because that arm will snap. So yeah, that's essentially. I didn't even see the exact moment of what happened here, but I believe that was essentially what happened. Was because Gordon did have him in an armbar, I think, but I don't think the armbar is where it happened. I'm gonna have to watch that back, but I think Gordon actually posted his, or excuse me, Bondar posted his arm out, and that's when it broke. But yeah, Malcolm Gordon, and even though that was kind of a freak way to win, Malcolm Gordon was looking good here. I mean, he was doing well in the fight. Who knows how it would have played out if that hadn't happened? But it looked like Gordon was on his way to winning the round anyway. So, pat myself on the back a little bit for not putting Bondar in any of those parlays. That was the right call on my part, so I feel pretty good about that. Let's go ahead and take a look, run through those bets I had. We've got 2 shots on Marc-Andre Barrios at the top there, the minus 130 and the plus 100. Those both lost. All my straight bets last year. Danilo Marquez, a little half-unit poke on him at plus 325, loses. And then the 1 unit on Jason Witt at plus 115 loses. All that down the drain. But then we've got our parlays. I had Strickland and Rachmaninov, 2 units on that. Davis and Dawadu, 1 unit on that. And then I had lost a unit and a half on the Witt Rowe over 1.5 rounds. Next parlay was a 3-banger. Rosa, Allen, and Dawadu. That one hits. And then I had my sprinkles on Battle in round 3. Well, that one did not happen. And a sprinkle on Barrios in round 3, which obviously didn't happen. So we're minus 0.77 units there on the night. But looking at our overall, we're at 42. I was thinking I was about 40. But overall, so far, since we started tracking on October 9th, we are at 42.43 units of profit with an ROI of 25%. We're learning and getting better every single week. We're putting the time in. We're putting the work in. Just a reminder, folks, before I sign off here, I am not a professional gambler, nor am I a gambling expert. I'm just an MMA nerd who likes to bet on fights. So I don't recommend that you tail me. I mostly put these videos out just because I like to. It's not like I'm trying to tell you what to bet on. But hey, if you want to tail me, I can't stop you. But do so at your own risk. None of this is financial advice. It's just me blabbing at my webcam. So if you decide to make the bets that I make, that's on you. But anyway, thanks so much for joining me, folks. I really do appreciate those of you who come to my YouTube channel and check out these videos. If you haven't yet, please give me a like on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights. Obviously, if you can like this video down there and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, I appreciate that. And hey, if you like my content, share it out there a little bit on Twitter or something. Like I'm trying to build the channel up a little bit. I've only got about 70 followers or something like that. I'm still really new to this, but. And then, of course, if you want to check out my bets, they are always available for free at betmma.tips/erikblock. That's ERIKBLOCK. Thanks so much for stopping by, folks. Reminding you once again to play it smart, play it tight, and let's grow those bankrolls. Take care, y'all. We'll see you next time.